Why, hello. I just got my eyebrows done. Do you like them? So, for the last part of the Twits, come and join me. If you got your eyebrows done, you can make some yourself. Get some fur, put stickers on the back. Can't say where I got the fur for my eyebrows, but it does match the curtains. So we got up to no bird pie for Mr. Twit. The next morning, when Mr. Twit came out with his huge basket to snatch all the birds from the big dead tree, there wasn't a single one on it. They were all sitting on top of the monkey cage. The roly-poly bird was there as well, and Mugglewump and his family were inside the cage, and the whole lot of them were laughing at Mr. Twit. You can see them all over here. No, over here, the monkeys and all the birds. Mr. Twit wasn't going to wait another week for his bird pie supper. He loved bird pie. It was his favourite meal, so that very same day he went after the birds again. This time he smeared all the top bars of the monkey cage with sticky glue, as well as the branches of the big dead tree. "Now I'll get you," he said, "whichever one you sit on." Goodness me, the nasty, nasty man, isn't he? The monkeys crouched inside the cage watching all this, and later on, when the roly-poly bird came swooping in for an evening chat, they shouted out, "Don't land on our cage, roly-poly bird. It's covered in sticky glue. So is the tree." And that evening, as the sun went down and all the birds came in again to roost, the roly-poly bird flew round and round the monkey cage and the big dead tree, singing out his warning. "There's sticky stuff now on the cage and the tree. If you land on either, you'll never get free. So fly away, stay up high, or you'll finish up tomorrow in a hot bird pie." "How are you going to do that?" asked Mrs. Twit, who had come outside to see what all the noise was about. "I won't have you smearing sticky glue all over the roof of our house." Mr. Twit got very excited. "I've got an idea," he cried. He didn't bother to keep his voice down because he didn't think the monkeys could understand him. We'll both go into town right away and we'll buy a gun each," he shouted. "How's that?" "Brilliant," cried Mrs. Twit, grinning and showing her long yellow teeth. That's not very nice teeth, is it? She should probably brush them a lot more often and stop smoking cigarettes. She was grinning and shouting. "We'll buy those big shotguns that spray out 50 bullets or more with each bang." "Exactly," said Mr. Twit. "Lock up the house while I go and make sure the monkeys are safely shut away." Mr. Twit went over to the monkey cage. "Attention," he barked in his fearsome monkey trainer voice. "Upside down, all of you, and jump to it. One on top of the other. Quick, get on with it, or I'll feel Mrs. Twit's sticks across your backsides." What a horrible man. Obediently, the poor monkeys stood on their hands and clambered on top of the other, with Mugglewump at the bottom and the smallest child at the very top. "Now stay there until we come back," Mr. Twit ordered. "Don't you dare move, and don't overbalance. When we return in 2 or 3 hours' time, I shall expect to find you all in exactly the same position as you are now. Understand?" With that, Mr. Twit marched away. Mrs. Twit went with him, and the monkeys were left alone with the birds. Mugglewump has an idea. As soon as Mr. and Mrs. Twit had disappeared down the road, the monkeys all flipped back onto their feet and the right way up. "Quick, get the key!" Mugglewump called out to the roly-poly bird, who was still sitting on the roof of the house. "What key?" shouted the roly-poly bird. "The key to the door of our cage," cried Mugglewump. "It's hanging on a nail in the woodshed. That's where he always puts it." The roly-poly bird flew down and came back with the key in his beak. You can see the roly-poly bird with the key. Mugglewump's skinny little hand having a look, trying to get it. He put his hand through the bars of the cage and took the key. He put it in the lock and turned it. The door opened. All 4 monkeys leapt out together. "We are free!" cried the 2 little ones. "Where shall we go, Dad? Where shall we hide?" "Don't get excited," said Mugglewump. "Calm down, everybody. Before we escape from this beastly place, we have one important thing to do." "What?" they asked him. "We're going to turn those terrible Twits upside down." "We're going to what?" they cried. "You must be joking, Dad." "I'm not joking," Mugglewump said. "We're going to turn both Mr. and Mrs. Twit upside down with their legs in the air. Wonder if you see her knickers." "Don't be ridiculous," the roly-poly bird said. "How can we possibly turn those 2 maggoty old monsters upside down?" "Oh, maggoty, such a favourite word of mine." We can, cried Mugglewump. "We are going to make them stand on their heads for hours and hours, perhaps forever. Let them see what it feels like for a change." "How?" said the roly-poly bird. "Just tell me how." Mugglewump laid his head on one side, and a tiny twinkling little smile touched the corners of his mouth. "Now and again," he said, "but not very often, I have a brilliant idea. This is one of them. Follow me, my friends. Follow me." He scampered off towards the house, and the 3 other monkeys and the roly-poly bird went after him. "Buckets and paintbrushes," cried Mugglewump. "That's what we want next. There are plenty in the workshed. Hurry up, everyone. Get a bucket and a paintbrush." Inside Mr. Twit's workshop, there was an enormous barrel of hug-tight glue, sticky glue, the stuff he used for catching birds. "Fill your buckets," Mugglewump ordered. "We are now going into the big house." Mrs. Twit had hidden the key to the front door under the mat, and Mugglewump had seen her doing it, so it was very easy for them to get in. In they went, all 4 monkeys with their buckets of sticky glue. Then came the roly-poly bird, flying in after them, with a bucket in his beak and a brush in his claw. Hey, Steph. Hey, Michelle. Hey, anybody out in Facebook land that I can't see. The great glue painting begins. "This is the living room," announced Mugglewump. "The grand and glorious living room where those two beautiful, silly me not reading properly, 2 fearful, frumptious freaks eat bird pie every week for supper." "Please don't mention bird pie again," said the roly-poly bird. "It gives me the shudders." "We mustn't waste time," cried Mugglewump. Hurry up, hurry up. Now the first thing is this. I want everyone to paint sticky glue all over the ceiling. Cover it all, smear it in every corner." "Over the ceiling?" they cried. Why the ceiling? Why do you think they're going to paint sticky glue all over the ceiling? There they are with their buckets and their paintbrushes. Never mind why, shouted Mugglewump. Just do as you're told and don't argue. That's how mummies and daddies and aunties and uncles and things feel when you don't do what you're told. But how do we get up there, they asked. We can't reach. Monkeys can reach anywhere, shouted Mugglewump. He was in a frenzy of excitement, now waving his paintbrush and his bucket and leaping all over the room. Come on, jump on the tables, stand on the chairs, hop on each other's shoulders. Roly-Poly can do it flying. Don't stand there gaping. We have to hurry. Don't you understand that? Those terrible Twits will be back any moment, and this time they'll have guns. Get on with it. Here, for heaven's sake, get on with it. No, this is child appropriate, Shannon, and I'm being very good. I know you want some eyebrows like this. I did say that you could just get some fur from wherever you can find some fur and put some sticky tape on the back. That's what I did. I said, my eyebrows match my curtains. I mean, my fringe. So the great glue painting of the ceiling began. All the other birds who had been sitting on the roof flew in to help, carrying paintbrushes in their claws and beaks. Mugglewump certainly does look super excited, doesn't he? There were buzzards, magpies, rooks, ravens, and many more. Rooks are a little bit like crows that we have in Australia. Oh, that's a good idea. You could shave the dog. Get some tape to go on the back and stick them on. I'd like to see that. Please post up a picture. Everyone was splashing away like mad, and with so many helpers, the job was soon finished. Well, they're not going to be in a bird pie today, are they? Unless they all happen to get stuck because they do things like I did with super glue and I held it on and then my fingers were stuck to it. Silly, silly, silly idea. The carpet goes on the ceiling. Does the carpet go on the ceiling or does it go down below? I always thought it went down below, didn't you? What now? They all said, looking at Mugglewump. Aha, cried Mugglewump. Now for the fun, now for the greatest upside down trick of all time. Are you ready? We're ready, said the monkeys. We're ready, said the birds. Pull out that carpet, shouted Mugglewump. Pull this huge carpet out from under the furniture and stick it onto the ceiling. Well, there you go. I was confused. The carpet goes on the ceiling. Did you know that? Onto the ceiling, cried one of the small monkeys. But that's impossible, Dad. I'll stick you on the ceiling if you don't shut up, snapped Mugglewump. Goodness me, I think they got a little bit of me in this book. Crazy, crazy. He's dotty, they cried. He's balmy. He's batty. He's nutty. He's screwy. He's wacky. I'm wacky. I'm a little bit mad, as we all know. He is wacky, cried the roly-poly bird. Poor old Muggles has gone off his wump head. Yes, the carpet does. It's always good to match the carpet to the curtains. Never sure which way round it should go. Should you match your carpet to your curtains or your curtains to your carpet? It's a designer conundrum, apparently. Oh, do stop shouting such rubbish and give me a hand, said Mugglewump, catching hold of one corner of the carpet. Pull, you nitwits, pull! The carpet was enormous. Well, that's something to be said. It covered the entire, what do you think it covers? The entire Where are they putting it? On the ceiling. Do you think it might cover the entire ceiling? Let's find out. No. Floor from wall to wall. But it was a good guess, and it's always good to guess when you're doing reading. Pop. It had a red and gold pattern on it. It is not easy to pull an enormous carpet off the floor when the room is full of tables and chairs. Pull! shouted Mugglewump. Pull, pull, pull. It was like a demon hopping around the room and telling everyone what to do. But you couldn't blame him. After months and months of standing on his head with his family, he couldn't wait for the time when the terrible Twits would be doing the same thing. At least that is what he hoped. With the monkeys and the birds all pulling and puffing, the carpet was dragged off the floor and finally hoisted up onto the ceiling of the living room. Was carpeted in red and gold. I missed a little bit out. That didn't make sense, did it? I shall reread that because it's a really good thing to practice, rereading, so that what you're reading makes sense. With the monkeys and the birds all pulling and puffing, the carpet was dragged off the floor and finally hoisted up onto the ceiling. And there it was stuck. That's the bit I missed out. All at once, the whole ceiling of the living room was carpeted in red and gold. Now it makes sense, doesn't it? It's always good to reread. Make sure you reread if you make a mistake. It does sound painful. Who would want to rip the carpet up and stick it on the ceiling? Now the table, the big table, shouted Mugglewump. Turn the table upside down and put a dollop of sticky glue onto the bottom of each leg. Would you want sticky glue on the bottom of each of your legs? Only if you were going to hang from the ceiling. Hoisting the huge table upside down onto the ceiling was not an easy job, but they managed it in the end. Will it stay there? They cried. Is the glue strong enough to hold it up? It's the strongest glue in the world, Mugglewump replied. It's the special bird-catching, bird-killing glue for smearing on trees. Don't you know? Please, said the roly-poly bird, I have asked you before not to mention that subject. How would you like it if it was monkey pie they made every Wednesday and all your friends had been boiled up and I went on talking about it? That's a good point, isn't it? Thanks, roly-poly bird. I do beg your pardon, said Mugglewump. I'm so excited I hardly know what I'm saying. That sounds a little bit like me when I get a little bit manic. Now the chairs. Do the same with the chairs. All the chairs must be stuck upside down to the ceiling. You can see him doing a little bit of gluing. Ooh, now I look like the Cheshire Cat's mouth. And in their right places. Oh, do hurry up, everybody. Any moment now, those two filthy freaks are going to come rushing in with their guns. Oh, I do love the way that Mugglewump describes the Twits. Filthy freaks. Can you see that? If we put another word on there with that would be alliteration, wouldn't it? If there were 5 of them, it'd be 5 filthy freaks. Ooh, can you say that really fast? 5 filthy freaks fast. The monkeys, with the birds helping them, put glue on the bottom of each chair leg and hoisted them up to the ceiling. Now the smaller tables, shouted Mugglewump, and the big sofa, and the sideboard, and the lamps. And the beastly plastic gnome on the sideboard. Everything, absolutely everything, must be stuck to the ceiling. Goodness me. Oh, my eyebrows are blending with my hair. It was terribly hard work. It was especially difficult to stick everything onto the ceiling in exactly the right place. But they got it done in the end. What now? Asked the roly-poly bird. He was out of breath and so tired he could hardly flap his wings. Now the pictures, cried Mugglewump. Turn all the pictures upside down, and will one of you birds please fly out onto the road and watch to see when those frumptious freaks are coming back. Frumptious freaks. Love these words, don't you? I'll go, said the roly-poly bird. I'll sit on the telephone wires and keep guard. It'll give me a rest. What's the next part about? The ravens swoop over. They had only just finished the job when the roly-poly bird came swooping in, screaming, "They're coming back! They're coming back!" Quickly the birds flew onto the roof of the house. The monkeys rushed into their cage and stood upside down on top of one of the other. Stood upside down, one on top of the other. A moment later, Mr. and Mrs. Twit came marching into the garden, each carrying a fearsome-looking gun. I'm glad to see those monkeys are still... It's a bit slack, wasn't it? I'm glad to see those monkeys are still upside down, said Mr. Twit. They're too stupid to do anything else, said Mrs. Twit. Hey, look at all those cheeky birds still up there on the roof. Let's go inside and load our lovely new guns, and then it'll be bang, 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 and bird pie for supper. Just as Mr. and Mrs. Twit were about to enter the house, two black ravens swooped low over their heads. Each bird carried a paintbrush in its claw, and each paintbrush was smeared. Do you think it might have been smeared with? It certainly wasn't hair dye. It was smeared with sticky glue. As the ravens whizzed over, they brushed a streak of sticky glue onto the tops of Mr. and Mrs. Twit's heads. They did it with the lightest touch, but even so the Twits both felt it. What was that? Cried Mrs. Twit. Some beastly bird has dropped his dirty droppings on my head. On mine too, shouted Mr. Twit. I felt it. I felt it. Don't touch it, cried Mrs. Twit. You'll get it all over your hands. Come inside and we'll wash it off at the sink. The filthy, dirty brutes, yelled Mr. Twit. I'll bet they did it on purpose. Just wait till I've loaded my gun. Mrs. Twit got the key from under the doormat, where Mugglewump had carefully replaced it, and into the house they went. What do you suppose happened when they got inside? Ooh, we shall have to find out when we turn the page. They do look awfully grumpy and frightfully fearful, don't they? The Twits are turned upside down. What's this? Gasped Mr. Twit as they entered the living room. What's happened? Screamed Mrs. Twit. They stood in the middle of the room, looking up all the furniture, the big table, the chairs, the sofa, the lamps, the little side tables, the cabinet with bottles of beer in it, the ornaments, the electric fire, which is like a heater, the carpet. Everything was stuck upside down to the ceiling. The pictures were upside down on the walls. Look at that. There is Mr. and Mrs. Twit way down here looking up at their ceiling, and you can see everything stuck up on the ceiling and even the pictures turned upside down. How funny is that? Imagine if you came home and everything was upside down. Would that freak you out? I think that would be far too much work for me. Although I did have lots and lots of fun Christmas vomiting all the way through a friend's house. And when she came home, she loved us for it. Said nobody ever. But it did look like somebody had gone through her house and vomited tinsel and Christmas decorations everywhere. And a super cool picture of Jesus doing this. Love it. and she couldn't reach it because it was on the bottom of the stairs, way up high. Those are super fun things to do for your friends. Have you done anything like that for your friends? And the floor they were standing on was absolutely bare. What's more, it had been painted white to look like the ceiling. Weren't those monkeys and birds very clever? Look, screamed Mrs. Twit, that's the floor. The floor's up there. This is the ceiling. We're standing on the ceiling. We're upside down, gasped Mr. Twit. We must be upside down. We're standing on the ceiling looking at the floor. Oh, help, screamed Mrs. Twit. Help, help, help. I'm beginning to feel giddy. So am I, cried Mr. Twit. I don't like this one little bit. We're upside down and all the blood's going to my head, screamed Mrs. Twit. If we don't do something quickly, I shall die. I know I will. I've got it, cried Mr. Twit. I know what we'll do. We'll stand on our heads. Then anyway, we'll be the right way up. Is that true? Or is it just perception and their reality has been adjusted? Sounds a little bit like a crazy, crazy world where the white rabbit might go. And you may just find Alice there. So they stood on their heads, and of course, the moment the tops of their heads touched the floor, funny, the sticky glue that the ravens had brushed on a few moments before did its job. Suckers. They were stuck. They were pinned down, cemented, glued, fixed to the floorboards. Through a crack in the door, the monkeys watched. They jumped right out of their cage the moment the Twits had gone inside. And the roly-poly bird watched, and all the other birds flew in and out to catch a glimpse of this extraordinary sight. What silly old goofballs! They thought that their house was upside down. Just a little bit cuckoo, weren't they? Just a little bit silly. That evening, Mugglewump and his family went up to the big wood on the top of the hill, and in the tallest tree of all, they built a marvellous tree house. I don't know if you can see that. They've built a marvellous tree house. All the birds, especially the big ones, the crows and the rooks and magpies, made their nests around the tree so that nobody could see it from the ground. You can't stay up here forever, you know, said the roly-poly bird. Why not? Said Mugglewump. It's a lovely place. Just wait till the winter comes, said the roly-poly bird. Monkeys don't like cold weather, do they? They most certainly don't, cried Mugglewump. The winter's so very cold over here. It's all snow and ice, said the roly-poly bird. Sometimes it's so cold a bird will wake up in the morning with his feet frozen to the bough that he's been roosting on. Goodness me, that is super cold, isn't it? You can see the birds are building all their nests around Mugglewump's tree house. It's much better than a cage, though, isn't it? Then what shall we do? Cried Mugglewump. My family will all be deep freezed. No, they won't, said the roly-poly bird, because when the first leaves start falling from the trees in the autumn, you can all fly home to Africa with me. Don't be ridiculous, Mugglewump said. Monkeys can't fly. You can sit on my back, said the roly-poly bird. I shall take you one at a time. You will all travel by the roly-poly super jet, and it won't cost you a penny. Who's sitting in there? Do the Twits get the shrinks? Shall we find out? Oh, I'm so excited, aren't you? And down here in the horrid house, Mr. and Mrs. Twit are still stuck upside down to the floor of the living room. "It's all your fault," yelled Mr. Twit, thrashing his legs in the air. "You're the one, you ugly old cow, who went hopping around shouting, 'We're upside down, we're upside down.' And you're the one who said to stand on our heads so we'd be the right way up, you whiskery old warthog," screamed Mrs. Twit. "Now we'll never get free. We're stuck here forever." Silly old codgers, aren't they? "You're annoying, Fly. Bugger off." "You may be stuck here forever," said Mr. Twit, "but not me. I'm going to get away." Mr. Twit wriggled and squirmed, and he squiggled and wormed, and he twisted and turned, and he choggled and churned. But the sticky glue held him tight to the floor, as it had once held the poor birds in the big dead tree. He was still as upside down as ever, standing on his head. But heads are not made to be stood on. If you stand on your head for a very long time, a horrid thing happens. And this was where Mr. Twit got his biggest shock of all. With so much weight on it from up above, his head began to get squashed into his body. Ooh. Quite soon it had disappeared completely, sunk out of sight in the fatty folds of his flabby neck. What a delicious thought that is. "I'm shrinking," burbled Mr. Twit. "So am I," cried Mrs. Twit. "Help me, help me, save me, call a doctor," yelled Mr. Twit. "I'm getting the dreaded shrinks." And so he was. Mrs. Twit was getting the dreaded shrinks too. And here we all thought it was just because Mr. Twit was being a meanie and posting little pieces on the end of her walking stick in all the chairs. And this time it wasn't a fake. It was the real thing. Their heads shrank into their necks. Then their necks began shrinking into their bodies. And their bodies began shrinking into their legs. And their legs began shrinking into their feet. And 1 week later, on a nice sunny afternoon, a man called Fred, don't know why it was Fred, could have been anybody, but today it happened to be Fred, came round to read the gas meter. When nobody answered the door, Fred peeped into the house, and there he saw on the floor of the living room 2 bundles of old clothes, 2 pairs of shoes, and a walking stick. There was nothing more left in this world of Mr. and Mrs. Twit, and everyone, including Fred, shouted, "Hooray!" And you can see just the pile of clothes and the walking stick and shoes. And at the back, you can see a picture of Roald Dahl, who wrote the story. A wonderful, wonderful man who created many, many stories. And this is just one of the wonderful stories that he's created. You can find the Twits at your local bookstore or at a library near you. No, I'm not selling this, and I'm not getting kickbacks. I'm just telling you where you could get your own copy, because the Twits is a favorite, and it's always, always good for rereading. It's a funny story, and it's got lots of super words in it. So if you'd like a copy, you could go and find your own or borrow it from the library. Maybe you already have your copy. I've got a whole collection of the Roald Dahl books because they're super awesome. He's super funny. And some of you might not have heard of his revolting rhymes. They are certainly excellent to get your hands on. So I hope you have enjoyed the Twits. I will have a new story tomorrow. Not sure what it might be, but it will certainly be something different. Have a wonderful day. Remember to be a little bit crazy in your world. Remember to be kind. and compassionate. And also remember to do something a little bit nice for yourself. Because when you do little bit nice things for yourself, you can be starting to do little bit nice things for others. And that's what makes our world a much nicer place to be in. So on that note, have a wonderful day, and I shall see you again.